The diplomatic vessel floated through the empty space between stars like a giant crystal floating in a dark ocean. Its walls were made of something that looked like glass, but was stronger than any metal known to the galaxy. Inside this beautiful ship, Ambassador Eth stood near the large window and watched the stars. Her 4 eyes blinked one after another as she tried to calm her nervous hearts. Yes, she had 2 hearts, and both of them were beating faster than normal. Today was the day she had been preparing for during the last several months. Today, she would meet the humans for the first time. They were a peaceful species. They had evolved from animals that were hunted by predators on their home planet millions of years ago. Because of this history, they had developed a society based on cooperation and avoiding conflict. They never fought wars. They never hunted other creatures. They ate only plants and believed that violence was the lowest form of communication. The Galactic Collective, which they led, included 17 different species from 17 different worlds. All of them shared this belief in peace. But the humans were different. The reports said they were predators. They had evolved by hunting other animals on their planet. They ate meat. They had fought countless wars against each other throughout their history. And most disturbing of all, they had eyes that faced forward like all predators do, designed to focus on prey and track movement. Eth took a deep breath through her respiratory slits and tried to remember her training. Not all predators were dangerous, she told herself. Some species had evolved past their violent nature. Perhaps the humans had done the same. Far away, aboard the Earth starship called Endurance, Commander Danny Grant was also preparing for the meeting. He stood in front of a mirror in his quarters and adjusted his uniform for the 10th time. The dark blue fabric was clean and pressed, with silver buttons that caught the light. He wanted to look his best. First impressions mattered, especially when you were representing your entire species. Lieutenant Morgan knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She was a young woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent years training for combat, but hoped she would never need to use those skills. "The shuttle is ready, Commander," she said. "We can dock with the ship in 20 minutes. Danny nodded and turned away from the mirror. "How are you feeling about this?" She shrugged. "Nervous, I guess. The reports say these aliens are afraid of predators, and we are definitely predators." "We were predators," Danny corrected her gently. "Now we are diplomats. Remember, we are here to make friends, not to scare anyone." Smiled slightly. "I will try to keep my hunting instincts under control, sir." They walked together through the metal corridors of the Endurance until they reached the shuttle bay. 12 other crew members were waiting for them, all chosen for this mission because of their calm personalities and diplomatic skills. No one wanted an incident during the first contact with a new alien civilization. The shuttle ride was short and quiet. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts, wondering what they would be like in person. The pictures in the reports showed tall creatures with pale, almost translucent skin and 4 large eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. They had no mouths that humans could see, instead absorbing nutrients through their skin and communicating through a complex system of sounds produced by vibrating membranes in their throats. When the shuttle docked with the vessel, Danny heard a soft hiss as the airlocks connected. He stood up and straightened his uniform one last time. "Remember," he said to his team, "smile, but not too much. Apparently showing teeth is considered aggressive in some cultures." The airlock door opened, and the humans stepped onto the alien ship for the first time. Eth was waiting for them in the docking area, surrounded by 6 other diplomats and 4 security officers. She had prepared a speech, practiced it 100 times, memorized every word. But when the humans walked through that door, all the words flew out of her mind. They were smaller than she expected. The reports had described them as medium-sized bipeds, but seeing them in person was different. They stood upright on 2 legs, with 2 arms hanging at their sides. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink, nothing like the pale blue of skin. They wore matching dark blue clothing that covered most of their bodies. But it was their eyes that made Eth freeze. Those eyes faced forward, both of them. They were positioned on the front of the human faces, close together, designed for depth perception and tracking movement. Predator eyes. Every in the room felt a chill run through their bodies when they saw those eyes. It was an instinct older than memory, older than civilization, coded into their very genes by millions of years of being hunted. Danny Grant stepped forward and did something that made 3 of the diplomats take an involuntary step backward. He smiled. His lips pulled back to reveal 2 rows of white teeth, flat in the front but pointed at the sides. Teeth designed for tearing meat. "Ambassador Eth," Danny said, his voice warm and friendly. "Thank you for inviting us aboard your beautiful ship. On behalf of Earth and all of humanity, I am honored to meet you." Eth forced herself to respond. She was a trained diplomat. She would not let primitive instincts control her behavior. "Welcome to the collective vessel harmony," she said through her translator device. "We are honored by your presence. Please, follow me to the conference room where we can begin our discussions." As she led the humans through the corridors of her ship, Eth could not help but notice how they moved. Their steps were quiet but purposeful. Their heads turned constantly, eyes scanning every corner and shadow. They moved like hunters, always aware of their surroundings, always ready for something to happen. Morgan walked beside Danny, her hand resting casually near her hip where her weapon was holstered. She had promised to be peaceful, but old habits were hard to break. Her eyes moved across the alien walls and floors, automatically noting exits, cover positions, and potential threats. She did not even realize she was doing it. They noticed everything. In the conference room, both species sat down at a long table made of the same crystal-like material as the ship's hull. Refreshments were offered, strange fruits and liquids that the humans politely accepted but did not consume. They did not eat in public, and the humans did not want to make them uncomfortable by eating in front of them. The diplomatic talks began with formal introductions and statements of peaceful intent. Both sides expressed their desire for friendship, trade, and cultural exchange. The words were careful and measured, chosen to avoid offense and build trust. But beneath the polite surface, something deeper was happening. They were watching the humans with the wary attention of prey animals who had stumbled upon predators. And the humans, without even knowing it, were watching them with the casual assessment of predators who had found something interesting. Neither side spoke of this. Neither side acknowledged the ancient dance of hunter and hunted that was playing out beneath their diplomatic smiles. The first day ended without incident. As the humans returned to their shuttle, Eth allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. Perhaps this would work. Perhaps predators and prey could become friends after all. She did not know that tomorrow would change everything. The diplomatic talks continued for several weeks. Every day, the humans would shuttle over from the Endurance and meet with the representatives in the Crystal Conference Room. They discussed trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation, and the possibility of humans joining the Galactic Collective as the 18th member species. Eth found herself slowly relaxing around the humans. They were strange, yes, with their forward-facing eyes and their meat-eating history. But they were also polite, curious, and genuinely interested in learning about culture. Commander Danny Grant asked thoughtful questions about their art and music. Lieutenant Morgan showed surprising knowledge about alien biology and medicine. The other human crew members were friendly and respectful. Perhaps, Eth thought, the reports had exaggerated the danger. Perhaps humans were not as frightening as their predator ancestors. Then came the incident in Corridor 7. It happened on a quiet afternoon when most of the crew was resting in their quarters. A young technician named was performing routine maintenance on one of the ship's many automated systems. He was alone in the corridor, focused on his work, when something went terribly wrong. The maintenance drone he was working on suddenly malfunctioned. Its cutting laser, designed to slice through metal panels for repairs, activated without warning. The bright beam swung wildly through the air and cut across arm before the safety systems could shut it down. Screamed. It was a high-pitched sound that echoed through the corridor and carried through the walls of the ship. Purple blood, the color of blood, sprayed from the wound and splattered across the white walls. Collapsed to the floor, clutching his injured arm, crying out in pain and terror. Morgan was the first to respond. She had been walking through a nearby corridor, heading back to the docking area after a meeting, when she heard the scream. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound. Her boots pounded against the crystal floor as she sprinted around corners and through doorways. She turned into Corridor 7 and stopped. She saw the wounded lying on the floor. She saw the purple blood spreading in a pool around him. She saw the damaged drone sparking and smoking against the wall. And something inside her changed. It was not a conscious decision. It was not something she chose to do. It was something that happened to her, something that rose up from the deepest parts of her brain where evolution had written instructions millions of years ago. Her pupils dilated. The black centers of her eyes expanded rapidly, growing from small circles to vast dark pools that almost swallowed the green color around them. Her body was trying to take in more light, to see better, to track movement more accurately. Her nostrils flared. She inhaled deeply through her nose, pulling the air into her lungs, analyzing the scents with parts of her brain that modern humans rarely used. The smell of blood filled her awareness. Alien blood, yes, but blood nonetheless. The copper and iron scent that her ancestors had followed across ancient plains for countless generations. Her muscles tensed. Every fiber in her body coiled tight like springs being compressed, ready to release in an explosion of movement. Her heart rate increased. Her breathing became shallow and rapid. Adrenaline flooded her system, preparing her for action. Her lips parted slightly, and for one terrible moment she looked like exactly what her ancestors had been. A predator, a hunter, a creature designed by nature to chase down prey and kill it. 3 security officers had arrived at the scene just before. They stood frozen in the corridor, their 4 eyes fixed on the wounded technician, unsure what to do. When appeared and underwent her transformation, they turned to look at her. And they could not move. Every instinct in their bodies screamed at them to run. This was the nightmare their species had faced on their home planet millions of years ago. This was the shadow that had hunted their ancestors across grasslands and through forests. This was the reason they had evolved 4 eyes, to watch for predators from every direction. This was the reason their blood ran cold at sudden movements and loud sounds. The human female stood in the corridor with her dilated eyes and her tensed muscles and her flared nostrils, and the security officers experienced pure, primal, absolute terror. Eth arrived at the scene moments later, summoned by the emergency alert on her communicator. She pushed through the crowd of crew members who had gathered at the entrance to the corridor, all of them too afraid to go inside. When she saw what was happening, her 2 hearts nearly stopped. Morgan stood over the wounded technician like a predator standing over fallen prey. Her eyes were black pools of hunger. Her body was a coiled spring of violence. The scent of blood hung heavy in the air. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The universe held its breath. Then blinked. The darkness in her eyes retreated slightly. Her shoulders relaxed just a fraction. She took one more deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was steady and controlled. "Someone get me a med kit," she said. "Now, and tell the Endurance we need Dr. Cole over here immediately." She dropped to her knees beside, ignoring the purple blood that soaked into her uniform pants. Her hands, the same hands that had been ready for violence moments ago, pressed gently but firmly against the wound on his arm. "It is okay," she said to the terrified technician, her voice soft and soothing. "You are going to be fine. The cut is not deep. Just stay still and let me help you." Stared up at her with all four of his eyes, trembling with fear and pain, but her hands were gentle. Her pressure on the wound was stopping the bleeding. Her voice was calm and reassuring. One of the security officers finally managed to move. He ran to get the med kit, his legs shaking beneath him. The others remained frozen, watching the human female tend to their wounded colleague with the same hands that had seemed ready to kill moments before. Dr. Cole arrived from the Endurance within 15 minutes. He was an older human male with gray hair and kind eyes, and he took over the treatment with professional efficiency. The wound was cleaned, sealed, and bandaged. The technician would make a full recovery. But the damage to the diplomatic mission could not be healed so easily. That evening, after had been moved to the medical bay and the corridor had been cleaned, Eth sat alone in her quarters and tried to process what she had witnessed. She had seen reports about human biology. She had read about their predator ancestry and their hunting instincts. But reading about something and seeing it with your own eyes were very different things. The way's eyes had changed. The way her body had responded to the scent of blood. The way she had transformed from a friendly diplomat into something ancient and terrifying in the span of a single heartbeat. And yet she had helped. She had controlled herself. She had chosen to heal instead of harm. Eth did not understand how that was possible. How could a creature experience such powerful predatory instincts and still choose compassion? How could someone smell blood and feel the hunger and then kneel down to save a life? She needed answers. She needed to understand what humans really were. She reached for her communicator and requested a private meeting with Commander Grant. The fate of the diplomatic mission, and perhaps the future relationship between humans and the Galactic Collective, depended on what she learned. Commander Danny Grant arrived at Eth's private quarters later that evening. The room was simple by human standards, with smooth crystal walls that glowed with a soft blue light and cushioned platforms instead of chairs. There were no decorations, no personal items, nothing to distract from the serious conversation that was about to take place. Eth gestured for Danny to sit on one of the platforms. He lowered himself carefully, not entirely comfortable with the alien furniture but determined to be respectful. "Thank you for coming," Eth said. Her voice was calm, but Danny could see the tension in the way she held her body. Her four eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel like he was being studied. "Of course, Ambassador, what did you want to discuss?" Eth was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her words were slow and careful. "I must know," she said, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to remain calm. "What happened to Lieutenant Morgan in that corridor? What did we witness today?" Danny had expected this question. He had been thinking about how to answer it ever since he heard about the incident. He could lie, could make excuses, could try to explain away what they had seen. But he knew that lies would only make things worse in the long run. "You saw what we are," he said finally, "what we evolved to be. Predators." "Yes," Danny nodded slowly, "but not just any predators. We are a very specific kind of predator. On Earth, we are called persistence hunters." Eth leaned forward slightly, her four eyes blinking in curiosity despite her fear. "I do not understand this term." Danny thought for a moment about how to explain human evolution to someone whose species had evolved as prey. "On our home planet," he began, "our ancestors were not the fastest animals. They were not the strongest. They did not have sharp claws or deadly venom or thick armor. Compared to many other predators on Earth, humans were actually quite weak." "Then how did you survive?" "We survived because we could run. Not fast, not like the animals we hunted, but we could run for a very, very long time. Hours, days even. Our bodies were designed to keep moving when other animals had to stop and rest." Danny leaned forward, warming to his explanation. "Imagine an antelope on the plains of Africa. It is much faster than a human. In a short race, it would win easily. But humans did not run short races. We would chase that antelope across the grassland, following its tracks, following its scent. When it stopped to rest, we kept running. When it tried to hide, we found it. When it ran again, we followed. "This sounds terrible," Eth said quietly. It was. Eventually, after hours of being chased, the antelope would collapse from exhaustion. Its body would overheat. Its muscles would fail. And then the humans would catch up and make the kill. Eth's respiratory slits constricted with distress. "This is what your species was designed for." "Yes, and there is more." Danny met her 4 eyes with his 2. "We could smell blood from very far away, miles sometimes. It helped us track wounded animals. It helped us find prey that was already weak or injured. Our sense of smell was never as good as some other predators, but we were especially sensitive to one thing: blood." So when Lieutenant Morgan smelled the blood in the corridor, every instinct in her body activated, Danny confirmed. Millions of years of evolutionary programming kicked in all at once. Her pupils dilated to let in more light so she could see better in dark conditions. Her heart rate increased to pump more blood to her muscles. Adrenaline flooded her system to prepare her for action. Her body thought it was time to hunt. The room fell silent. Eth processed this information, trying to understand what it meant for her people and their relationship with humans. "But she helped," she said finally. "She did not attack him, she saved his life." Danny nodded slowly, and something like pride crossed his face. "That is the other thing about humans. We learn to control it. We learn to redirect those instincts." "How is that possible? How do you resist such powerful biological programming?" "We do not resist it," Danny said. "We redirect it. There is a difference." He stood up and walked to the glowing wall, looking out at the stars beyond. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more thoughtful. When smelled that blood, her body wanted to hunt. Every cell, every nerve, every ancient part of her brain was telling her to chase, to catch, to kill. But her mind, the conscious part of her that is truly Morgan, chose something different. She looked at and did not see prey. She saw someone who needed help. And she was able to override her instincts. Not override, transform. Danny turned back to face Eth. That same drive that made our ancestors chase animals across savannas now makes us chase goals, solve problems, protect the people we care about. We feel the call of our nature every single day, Ambassador, and every single day we choose what to do with it. Eth was quiet for a long time, thinking about his words. Finally, she asked the question that had been weighing on her mind since she first read the reports about humans. "How do you live with it, this constant struggle inside yourself?" Danny smiled slightly. It was a sad smile, the kind that spoke of battles fought and won, but not without cost. "Every human you will ever meet is fighting a war inside themselves," he said. "A war between what they are and what they want to be. Between their instincts and their ideals, between the predator and the protector." He walked back to the platform and sat down, facing Eth directly. "Some humans lose that war. They give in to their darker instincts. They hurt others. They become the monsters that our biology wants us to be. But most of us, Ambassador, most of us win. Every day, billions of humans wake up feeling the ancient hunger, the predator drive, the instinct to hunt and dominate. And every day, billions of humans choose to be something better." "This is why you do not eat meat anymore?" Eth asked. Danny laughed softly. "No, we still eat meat. Many of us do anyway, but we no longer hunt for it. We raise animals for food, or we create artificial meat in laboratories. The hunting instinct is still there, but we have found other ways to satisfy it." "Other ways?" "We hunt knowledge," Danny said. "We hunt solutions to problems. We hunt cures for diseases and answers to mysteries. We hunt records and achievements. Every time a human scientist discovers something new, every time an athlete breaks a record, every time an artist creates something beautiful, They are using that same drive that once made us chase animals across the plains. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. That is the secret of humanity, Ambassador. We are not good despite being predators. We are good because we are predators. All that energy, all that drive, all that relentless persistence that let us hunt animals to exhaustion, we now use to hunt for a better future. We are still hunters. We have just changed what we hunt. Eth sat in silence, processing everything she had heard. It was a lot to take in. Everything she had believed about predators, about prey, about the natural order of things, was being challenged by this human male sitting across from her. What you are describing, she said slowly, is a species that is constantly at war with itself. Yes, a species that carries incredible potential for both violence and compassion. Yes, a species that must choose, every moment of every day, what kind of creature it wants to be. Danny nodded. Now you understand, now you see us clearly. Eth looked at the human commander with new eyes. Not the eyes of prey watching a predator, not the eyes of fear and suspicion, but the eyes of someone beginning to understand a truth that was more complex and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. I think, she said slowly, that I have much to think about. Take all the time you need, Ambassador. Danny rose to leave. We are not going anywhere. As he walked out of her quarters, Eth called after him. Commander Grant. He turned back. Thank Lieutenant Morgan for saving his life. Whatever her instincts told her to do, she chose to be a healer. That choice deserves recognition. Danny smiled. I will tell her, an ambassador. Thank you for asking. Most people just assume they know what humans are. You took the time to understand. He left, and Eth was alone with her thoughts and the stars, and a new understanding of the strange predators who had come in peace. 3 weeks passed after the incident in Corridor 7. The diplomatic talks continued, though something had changed in the way they looked at their human guests. There was still fear in their eyes, but there was also something new. Curiosity, perhaps, or the beginning of respect. Eth had shared her conversation with Commander Grant with the other diplomats. Not all of them were convinced that humans could be trusted. Some argued that a predator was always a predator, no matter how much it claimed to have changed. But others, like Eth, were beginning to see humans in a different light. The two ships, the Harmony and the Human Endurance, traveled together through space toward the heart of collective territory. There would be more meetings, more negotiations, more chances for the two species to learn about each other. The future looked promising. Then the owl appeared. They came without warning, emerging from hyperspace in a flash of light and energy. 40 warships surrounded the two vessels in a matter of seconds, their weapons powered up and ready to fire. The owl were raiders, one of the few aggressive species in the galaxy who had refused to join the peaceful collective. They survived by attacking weaker ships, stealing their cargo, and selling their crews as slaves. On the bridge of the Harmony, alarms screamed and lights flashed red. Eth gripped the armrest of her command chair as the ship shook from the first wave of weapons fire hitting their shields. Shields at 80%, one of her officers reported, his voice high with panic. Another hit like that and they will fail. Send a distress signal to the nearest collective fleet, Eth ordered, though she knew it was useless. The nearest fleet was days away. Help would not arrive in time. The communication screen flickered, and the face of the owl commander appeared. He was a large creature with rough gray skin and small, cruel eyes. His mouth was full of sharp teeth that he displayed in a predatory grin. Surrender your vessel and all its cargo, he said, his voice harsh and mocking. Give us the humans as well. I hear they are rare. They will fetch a good price on the slave markets. Resist, and everyone on board will die. Eth felt despair closing around her hearts. The Harmony had no weapons capable of fighting back against 40 warships. They had never developed military technology because they had never needed it. The collective's policy of peaceful cooperation had always protected them before. But there was no collective fleet here now. There was only the Harmony, the Endurance, and 40 enemy ships with weapons pointed at them. Then Eth noticed something strange. The human officers who had transferred to the Harmony for the diplomatic mission were standing at the back of the bridge. There were 14 of them in total, including Commander Grant and Lieutenant Morgan. They were all standing very still, watching the enemy ships and their pupils were dilated. Danny Grant's eyes had gone dark the same way he had in the corridor 3 weeks ago, but there was no blood here. There was no wounded triggering his hunting instincts. There was only danger, threat, a challenge. And the humans were responding to it with the same primal intensity they had once reserved for hunting prey. "Commander," Eth said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are you doing?" Danny turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not rage. It was not fear. It was something deeper, something older, something that made her want to back away even though she knew he was an ally. "We are doing what we do best," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was iron beneath it. "Ambassador, I need you to open a channel to our ship." Within minutes, the Endurance had maneuvered alongside the Harmony. More human crew members came aboard through emergency docking tubes, armed with weapons that they had never seen before. Compact rifles that glowed with energy, pistols that hummed with power, armor that covered their bodies in dark protective plates. The humans moved through the corridors of the Harmony with eerie coordination. They communicated in short bursts of words and subtle gestures, understanding each other perfectly without needing long explanations. They were like a pack of hunters preparing for the chase. Morgan took position at the main weapons console, her fingers flying over controls that they had never learned to use. On Earth ships, every station could be converted to weapons control in an emergency. They had never understood why. Now they were beginning to see. Danny opened a channel to the Owl fleet. His voice broadcast to every enemy ship. "This is Commander Danny Grant of the Earth vessel Endurance. You have attacked a ship under human protection. You have 1 minute to withdraw." The Owl commander laughed, a harsh sound that crackled through the speakers. 14 humans against 40 warships. You are insane. You will all die and your bodies will be sold for meat. Possibly, Danny admitted. His voice remained calm, almost conversational. But here is the thing about humans. We do not calculate odds the way you do. We do not see 40 ships and feel fear. We see 40 targets and feel excited. The bridge fell absolutely silent. They stared at the human commander with a mixture of terror and awe. The Owl commander's laughter died in his throat. "Your species evolved as apex predators on your world," Danny continued. "So did ours. The difference is, we spent 10,000 years learning to work together, to coordinate, to turn our individual hunting instincts into collective strategy." He took a step toward his dark eyes fixed on the enemy commander. "You look at us and see small, weak creatures with no claws and no fangs. What you should see is the species that hunted its own planet's megafauna to extinction. The species that spread across an entire world and dominated every ecosystem we entered. The species that reached into the stars because we got bored of having no more challenges on our home planet." He paused, letting the words sink in. 45 seconds. The Owl commander's face had changed. The mocking confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like uncertainty. "You are bluffing. Your ship is no match for our fleet." "Our ship," Danny smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted weakness in its prey. "You are worried about our ship. You should be worried about us." He gestured to the humans spread across the bridge and throughout the corridors of the Harmony. "Each of the people you see here has been trained to fight since childhood. Each of them has spent years learning how to kill efficiently and effectively. Each of them is, right now, experiencing the same biological response that made our ancestors the most successful predators on Earth. Their pupils are dilated. Their hearts are pumping adrenaline. Their bodies are preparing for violence. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. And every single one of them is hopping you give us a reason to fight. 20 seconds, called out from the weapons console. Her voice was eager, hungry. She was not afraid of the 40 warships. She was excited by them. The AL commander looked at his tactical displays. He saw the small human ship, barely a fraction of the size of his fleet. He saw the unarmed vessel with its crystal walls and peaceful crew. And he saw the humans standing still, watching, waiting, with those dark, dilated eyes and those eager, predatory smiles. 10 seconds, Danny said. Make your choice. For a long moment, nothing happened. The galaxy held its breath. Then, one by one, the AL ships began to withdraw. They powered down their weapons, disengaged their targeting systems, and turned away from the Harmony. Within 5 minutes, the entire Raider fleet had jumped back into hyperspace, leaving the two ships alone in the darkness between stars. Danny let out a long breath, and some of the darkness faded from his eyes. Around the bridge, the other humans relaxed slightly, though they kept their hands near their weapons. Eth stared at the empty, where 40 enemy ships had been moments before. They left, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. 40 warships against 14 humans, and they left. Danny turned to face her, and now his eyes were almost normal again, almost human. They were smart, he said simply. They looked into our eyes and saw what we really are, and for the first time in their lives, they felt what it is like to be prey. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at the stunned crew. Now you understand, he said quietly. Humans are not dangerous because we are strong. We are dangerous because we never stop, we never give up, we never let go. Once we start hunting something, we chase it until we catch it or until we die trying. He smiled, and this time it was almost gentle. You never want to be what we are hunting. But if you are what we are protecting, there is nothing in this galaxy that can hurt you. He left the bridge, and they were alone with their thoughts and their newfound understanding of what it meant to have humanity as an ally. The AL never attacked another ship under human protection again. Word spread quickly through the Raider networks and the criminal underworlds of the galaxy. The humans were not to be touched, not because they had powerful weapons or massive fleets, but because they were something far more dangerous. They were predators who had learned to fight as a pack, and when they smelled blood or sensed danger, something ancient and terrible woke up inside them. In the weeks that followed the attack, the diplomatic mission continued toward collective space, but everything had changed. They no longer looked at the humans with the pure fear of prey animals facing predators. There was still caution in their eyes, still an instinctive wariness, but there was also respect, and something that might have been the beginning of friendship. Eth spent many hours talking with Commander Grant and the other human crew members. She learned about Earth and its history. She learned about the wars that humans had fought against each other, terrible conflicts that had killed millions. She learned about the slow, painful journey toward peace that humanity was still walking. We are not perfect, Danny told her one evening as they watched the stars together. We have done terrible things to each other and to our world. The same instincts that let us survive as hunters also made us capable of great cruelty. But you changed, Eth said. We are still changing. Every generation is a little better than the one before, a little more compassionate, a little more wise, a little more in control of our darker impulses. He paused, looking out at the infinite darkness. It is a slow process. Sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but we keep trying. On a quiet evening a few days before they were scheduled to arrive at the collective capital world, Eth found Morgan sitting alone in one of the observation decks. The young human woman was staring out at the stars with a thoughtful expression on her face. "May I join you?" Eth asked. Nodded, shifting to make room on the curved bench she was sitting on. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars drift past. The light from distant suns created patterns on the crystal floor beneath their feet. "I owe you an apology," Eth finally said. Turned to look at her with curious eyes. Human eyes, with their strange forward-facing position and their round pupils that changed size with the light and their emotions. "An apology for what?" "When I saw your eyes change in that corridor when was hurt, I felt only fear. I looked at you and saw a monster, a predator who had caught the scent of blood." Eth paused, searching for the right words. "I judged you for what your biology made you, not for who you chose to be. That was wrong of me." Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft and thoughtful. "I understand. If I saw someone from your species suddenly transform into something dangerous, I would probably feel the same way." She smiled slightly. "Actually, no, I would not. Humans do not have prey instincts. We forgot what it feels like to be hunted. That must be what it is like to be you. To always be watching for danger, to always be ready to run." "It is exhausting sometimes," Eth admitted. "But it is all we have ever known. Our entire civilization was built around avoiding conflict, because conflict meant being eaten by something bigger and stronger. And our civilization was built around chasing things until they were too tired to run anymore." Looked back at the stars. Different strategies. Both of them worked. And now here we are, two species from opposite ends of the predator-prey spectrum, sitting together and looking at the same stars. "It is strange, is it not?" "Strange and wonderful." His voice held warmth that surprised Eth. "The galaxy is bigger and more diverse than either of our species ever imagined. There is room for all of us here." Eth was silent for a moment, then asked the question that had been weighing on her mind since the confrontation with the owl. "In the corridor when you smelled blood and on the bridge when we were surrounded by enemy ships, your eyes changed the same way. The same dilation, the same intensity, but your responses were so different. You healed one and terrified the other. How did you choose?" Consider the question carefully before answering. "We carry our predator nature with us everywhere we go," she said. "Every time we see blood, every time we sense weakness, every time we are threatened, something ancient wakes up inside us. The hunger never really goes away." She turned to face Eth fully, her green eyes catching the starlight. "But what we do with that hunger is our choice. When I saw lying there bleeding and scared, my body wanted to hunt. But my mind saw someone who needed help. So I took all that energy, all that adrenaline, all that predatory intensity, and I used it to save his life instead of end it." "And the owl?" "The owl were threatening people I had sworn to protect. When I looked at those 40 ships, my body wanted to fight, and this time my mind agreed." Smile turned slightly sharp. "That is the thing about humans. We are not just predators. We are social predators, pack hunters. We protect our pack with the same intensity that we used to hunt our prey." "Your pack," Eth said slowly. "You mean the other humans." "I mean everyone we care about." His voice grew more serious. "When you welcomed us onto your ship, when you shared your food and your culture and your trust with us, you became part of our pack. The collective. Everyone who opens their hearts to humanity becomes someone we will protect." She reached out and placed her hand over Eth's, a gesture of warmth and connection that transcended species boundaries. "That is the choice we make, Ambassador. Every human being is a monster who decided to be something else. We take the parts of ourselves that want to hunt and kill and dominate, and we turn them into something better. We hunt knowledge instead of animals. We hunt injustice instead of weakness. We hunt suffering instead of prey. We take all that savage energy and we point it at problems instead of people." Eth felt something shift in her understanding. Something fundamental changed in the way she viewed these strange, terrifying, wonderful creatures. "What you are describing," she said slowly, "is a species that turned its greatest weakness into its greatest strength." No, said gently. We turned our greatest danger into our greatest gift. The same instincts that could make us monsters also make us heroes. The same drive that could lead us to cruelty also leads us to compassion. We are both things at once, always, forever. The monster and the protector, the predator and the guardian. She stood up, offering her hand to help Eth rise. The collective will need time to accept this, the ambassador said carefully. Many of our people will still fear you. The prey instinct runs deep. That is okay, kept her hand extended. Fear is not the worst place to start. Just give us a chance to show you what we really are. Not the predators who smell blood and feel the hunger, but the humans who smell blood and choose to heal. Eth took the offered hand. His grip was warm and firm, the hand of a creature evolved for grasping tools and weapons, now used in friendship. I think, Eth said, that this is the beginning of something important, something that will change the galaxy. Smiled, and there was nothing predatory in it. Just warmth and hope and the promise of a future where predators and prey could stand together as equals. It already has, Ambassador, it already has. They walked together through the crystal corridors of the ship, human and alien side by side. Behind them, the stars continued their endless dance through the darkness. Ahead of them lay a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, challenges and opportunities. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that the collective was only beginning to understand. Humans were terrifying not because they were predators, but because they had learned to choose what to hunt. They could have chosen power. They could have chosen domination. They could have chosen to let their ancient instincts rule them and become the monsters that evolution had designed them to be. Instead, they chose to hunt for a better universe. They chose to protect the weak and stand against the strong. They chose to take all that savage, relentless, unstoppable predator energy and aim it at making things better. That was what made humans truly frightening and truly wonderful. The galaxy would never be the same.